Imagine a tiny package of nature's finest energy, small, unassuming, yet packed with the potential to transform the way we age. Nuts have long been celebrated as little powerhouses of nutrition, especially for those navigating the intricate journey of growing older. But within this humble snack lies a fascinating paradox. Nuts can be both a source of vitality and, if chosen unwisely, a hidden threat to well-being. For seniors, every bite matters more than ever. The body's rhythms slow, vulnerabilities increase, and the choices we make in our daily diet ripple through our health in profound ways. Nuts are often praised for their rich content of healthy fats, proteins, and essential nutrients. They offer protection for the heart, nourishment for the brain, and resilience for bones. Yet, not all nuts are created equal. Some carry risks that can quietly undermine the very health we seek to protect. This delicate balance between benefit and caution is where wisdom becomes essential. It invites us to move beyond seeing food as mere fuel, toward appreciating it as a form of mindful nourishment, a dialogue between the body, the mind, and the soul. Eating the right nuts in the right way is more than a dietary choice. It's a metaphor for aging with intention and grace. Throughout this journey, we'll explore 3 nuts that stand as champions of senior health, natural allies that support longevity and vitality. Alongside them, we'll uncover 3 nuts that deserve a wary eye, not as villains, but as reminders that not every gift from nature fits perfectly into our evolving needs. As we unravel the science, the stories, and the subtle wisdom embedded in these tiny treasures, a larger truth emerges. Aging is not about surrendering vitality, but about embracing a deeper relationship with the food that fuels us. In the world of nuts, this means knowing when to reach for the handful that heals and when to hold back, preserving well-being in the years to come. So, take a moment to imagine your body as a garden, and nuts as seeds, some destined to blossom into strength, others that must be planted with care or avoided altogether. This is a story about making choices that honor your journey, your health, and your future. Because in the dance between nature's gifts and our wisdom, when we think of superfoods, nuts often don't get the full spotlight they deserve. Yet, these little nutritional gems are among the most potent allies for seniors seeking to safeguard their health. It's easy to overlook them as mere snacks, but nuts are in truth nature's compact pharmacies, brimming with the vitamins, minerals, and healthy fats that aging bodies crave. Imagine a single handful of almonds or walnuts, a simple serving packed with the nutrients that support a beating heart, a sharp mind, and resilient bones. For seniors, these benefits are not just perks, they are lifelines. The heart, our tireless engine, benefits profoundly from the healthy fats in nuts. Unsaturated fats, especially the omega-3s found abundantly in walnuts, act like gentle guardians, reducing inflammation and lowering the risk of heart disease, the leading cause of mortality worldwide. Magnesium and potassium, common in many nuts, help regulate blood pressure, a crucial factor for seniors striving to maintain cardiovascular health. Beyond the heart lies the brain, the center of memory, wisdom, and identity. Aging often brings challenges to cognitive function, but research reveals that regular nut consumption is linked to better memory and slower mental decline. Vitamin E, a powerful antioxidant found in almonds and hazelnuts, combats oxidative stress, one of the silent saboteurs of brain cells. It's like giving your mind a protective shield against the ravages of time. And then there are bones, the very framework that supports our daily lives. Nuts supply essential minerals like calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium, crucial for maintaining bone density and preventing fractures. For seniors, strong bones mean the freedom to move, to dance, and to embrace life's adventures without fear. But nuts offer more than physical benefits. They contain fiber, which nurtures digestive health and helps regulate blood sugar, an important consideration as metabolism slows with age. They provide plant-based protein, a vital building block for repairing tissues and maintaining muscle mass, which naturally diminishes over time. Scientific studies abound, consistently highlighting how seniors who include nuts regularly in their diet experience lower risks of chronic illnesses, from diabetes to stroke. Beyond numbers and data, countless seniors share stories of renewed energy, stabilized health, and a greater sense of well-being, all linked to these nutrient-dense seeds of nature. As we delve deeper into which nuts hold the keys to these benefits, it becomes clear that they're not just food, they are a lifeline woven into the fabric of aging well. To understand their power fully, we must first appreciate their unique composition, their role in our bodies, and the profound impact they can have when chosen wisely. In this treasure chest of nutrition, every nut has a story. Some shine brighter, offering targeted benefits that align perfectly with the needs of seniors. Others require a cautious approach. Understanding these nuances is the first step in unlocking. Among the vast variety of nuts nature offers, 3 stand out as champions for seniors, allies that deliver exceptional benefits tailored to the needs of an aging body. These aren't just snacks. They're little powerhouses that can revitalize the heart, sharpen the mind, and fortify the body. First, let's talk about almonds. These humble nuts are packed with vitamin E, a potent antioxidant that plays a crucial role in protecting cells from damage. For seniors, vitamin E is a guardian of brain health, helping to slow cognitive decline and sharpen memory. Beyond that, almonds provide magnesium and fiber, which contribute to heart health by helping to lower bad cholesterol and regulate blood sugar. Incorporating almonds into your daily routine can be as simple as sprinkling them over your morning oatmeal, or enjoying a handful as a satisfying snack that fuels you through the day. Next up are walnuts, often hailed as brain food for a reason. Walnuts are uniquely rich in omega-3 fatty acids, essential fats that the body can't produce on its own. These fats reduce inflammation throughout the body, including the brain, and support cognitive function. Studies have shown that regular walnut consumption can improve memory, mood, and even delay the onset of age-related cognitive diseases. Imagine savoring a handful of walnuts not just for their rich, buttery flavor, but as a daily investment in your mental sharpness and emotional well-being. Then, there are pistachios, the vibrant, green nuts often overlooked but no less powerful. Pistachios are loaded with lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants critical for eye health. For seniors, maintaining good vision is vital to independence and quality of life, and pistachios offer a delicious way to support this. Beyond vision, these nuts help manage cholesterol levels and promote a healthy heart thanks to their unique blend of healthy fats and fiber. Whether added to salads, yogurt, or enjoyed straight from the shell, pistachios bring both flavor and function to the table. These 3 nuts share more than just impressive nutritional profiles. They embody a philosophy of vitality that's perfect for seniors, small choices with powerful outcomes. Their nutrients work synergistically, supporting multiple facets of health from the inside out. Embracing these nuts is not about drastic changes, but simple, consistent additions that weave seamlessly into daily life. As you consider these nuts, imagine them as nature's gifts, each offering a unique key to unlock better health and renewed energy. While some nuts shine as true heroes in the journey of aging, others carry a quiet warning, reminders that not every natural gift suits every stage of life equally. For seniors, the difference between nourishment and harm can be subtle, hidden in the details of portion size, nutrient overload, or added ingredients. It's a delicate dance, where knowledge becomes the shield protecting well-being. Take macadamia nuts, for example. Their creamy, rich texture makes them a tempting treat, but they're also incredibly high in calories and fat, even the healthy kind. For seniors managing weight, cholesterol, or digestive health, overindulgence can tip the scales in the wrong direction. One handful can pack more energy than expected, quietly contributing to unwanted weight gain or cholesterol imbalance if eaten without moderation. The lesson here isn't to avoid them completely, but to approach macadamias with mindfulness and careful portion control. Then there's the Brazil nut, a small but mighty source of selenium, an essential mineral important for immune function and antioxidant protection. Yet here lies a paradox. Too much selenium can become toxic. Just a few Brazil nuts a day can easily push seniors beyond the safe limit, leading to symptoms like nausea, fatigue, or more serious health concerns. This is a vivid example of how even the healthiest foods can become harmful if balance is lost. For seniors, the key is restraint and awareness, enjoying Brazil nuts occasionally, never in excess. And finally, the often overlooked pitfall: salted or flavored nuts. While the crunch and savory burst can be satisfying, the added sodium, preservatives, and artificial flavors pose real risks. High sodium intake can elevate blood pressure, a serious concern for many seniors. Additionally, additives might trigger sensitivities or digestive upset. Choosing raw or lightly roasted nuts without added salt or flavoring isn't just a preference. It's a safeguard for heart and kidney health. These cautionary tales remind us that aging bodies demand respect and care in every food choice. Nuts aren't inherently good or bad. They simply require an attentive hand, a listening ear to what our bodies truly need. When it comes to these three nuts, wisdom lies in moderation and mindful selection. In embracing this balanced approach, seniors are not just managing risks, they're tuning into a deeper connection with their health, honoring the fragile harmony that sustains vitality through the years. It's a subtle but powerful practice, knowing when to savor and when to step back, all in the pursuit of lifelong wellness. As we journey deeper into the world of nuts and their powerful impact on senior health, it becomes clear that understanding risks isn't about fear, it's about empowerment. For seniors, every bite counts and small adjustments can make a world of difference. One of the most critical considerations is portion control. Nuts are calorie-dense, and while their fats are healthy, they still pack a significant energy punch. Seniors with slower metabolisms or those managing weight must be mindful. Enjoying nuts in measured amounts ensures benefits without tipping into excess. Think of it as savoring a precious treasure rather than rushing through a feast. Another key aspect is allergies and sensitivities. While nut allergies are often associated with younger populations, they can develop or worsen with age. It's vital for seniors to watch for signs like skin reactions, digestive discomfort, or breathing difficulties. Consulting with healthcare providers before adding new nuts to the diet can prevent complications. Chewing difficulties also pose a unique challenge. Many seniors struggle with dental issues or weakened jaws, making hard nuts tough to enjoy safely. Opting for softer nuts or nut butters can provide the same nutrients with less strain. For example, almond butter or finely ground walnuts can be nourishing alternatives that protect oral health while delivering essential benefits. Medication interactions deserve special attention. Certain nuts, especially those rich in vitamin K like cashews, may interfere with blood-thinning medications, while others might affect how drugs are metabolized. Open communication with doctors and pharmacists helps tailor nut consumption safely within each individual's medical context. Hydration also plays a silent role. Nuts' fiber content is fantastic for digestion, but without adequate water intake, seniors may experience discomfort or constipation. Encouraging balanced hydration alongside nut consumption promotes smooth digestion and maximizes nutrient absorption. Finally, quality matters more than ever. Selecting fresh, properly stored nuts free from mold and rancidity prevents exposure to toxins that can weaken immune systems or trigger inflammation. Organic or minimally processed options reduce the risk of pesticide exposure, aligning with a holistic approach to health. By navigating these considerations thoughtfully, seniors transform nut eating from a mere habit into a mindful ritual, a celebration of life and health that honors their unique needs. Beyond their nutritional value, nuts hold a profound lesson, a metaphor for the very process of aging itself. At first glance, a nut may seem small, unassuming, even simple, but hidden within its tough shell lies a treasure: nourishment, resilience, and potential. This mirrors the journey of aging, where beneath the exterior of wrinkles and time-worn skin, the spirit and wisdom grow ever richer. Think of the shell as life's challenges, the obstacles, losses, and transformations that come with growing older. It's the protective barrier we build around ourselves, sometimes hard and impenetrable, shielding the delicate core inside. But just like a nut, what matters most is the life it sustains within, the vitality, the memories, the lessons passed through years. Embracing nuts in our diet is like embracing the paradox of aging. Strength and vulnerability intertwined, endurance paired with tenderness. Each nut tells a story of survival, a tiny seed that has weathered seasons, storms, and time, emerging whole and full of life. In the same way, seniors embody a deep well of experience, having faced life's seasons and grown wiser for it. This metaphor invites a shift in perspective. Aging is not decline, but transformation. It's not about losing vitality, but channeling it differently with patience, acceptance, and grace. When seniors choose their nuts carefully, balancing nourishment with caution, they mirror the balance we seek in life, between action and rest, indulgence and restraint, external care and internal reflection. In this light, nuts become more than food. They are symbols of resilience, carriers of ancient wisdom, and reminders that life's richness often lies beneath the surface. As we savor their taste and absorb their benefits, we also savor the wisdom of aging gracefully, embracing both strength and softness, the shell and the kernel, the journey and the destination. As we reach the close of this journey through the world of nuts and senior health, one truth stands clear. True well-being is built on mindful choices, balance, and respect for the intricate needs of our aging bodies. Nuts in their quiet wisdom teach us this lesson profoundly, that nourishment is not just about fuel, but about harmony. By embracing the right nuts, those rich in nutrients, antioxidants, and healthy fats, seniors unlock doors to vitality, cognitive clarity, and heart health. Equally important is the awareness to approach certain nuts with caution, recognizing the delicate balance between benefit and risk that shifts as we grow older. But beyond the science and nutrition lies a deeper wisdom, one that connects food to life itself. The tough shell and precious kernel remind us that aging is not about loss, but transformation, a graceful unfolding of strength, resilience, and inner richness. To eat well is to live well. To choose wisely is to honor the years behind us and the moments still ahead. So, as you integrate these nut wisdoms into your daily life, remember, every small choice contributes to a greater whole. The handful of nuts you enjoy today is more than a snack. It's a celebration of life's enduring vitality, a tribute to your journey, and a promise of well-being that lasts. If you found value in this journey, I warmly invite you to like, share, and subscribe. So together, we can continue exploring the wisdom that supports health, happiness,